Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
It's that time again for the White Marlin Open, and yes, Michael Jordan's plane has been spotted touching down in Ocean City. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. In our weekly roundup, we'll take a look at the impact of such events and the changing landscape of the resort. Meanwhile, Wacomico County Council could be moving closer to banning what is known as DAF tanks. In our studio this morning is Greg Bassett, general manager and editor for the Salisbury Independent newspaper, and Stephen Green, publisher and editor of the Maryland Coast Dispatch. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Don.
Hi, guys.
So I want to first turn to you, Stephen. Have you seen Michael Jordan there? What's going on?
Haven't seen him personally, but it was funny. My wife and I were out to eat just north of the Route 50 bridge last Saturday night, and Michael Jordan's boat brought a swordfish to the scales at another fishing tournament called the Big Fish Classic, which is headquartered down to Talbot Street Marina. So, his boat is very unique, and it's got a blue design on it and Carolina blue design. And, he didn't actually come to the scales. I have to admit, we got a little bit touch of stardom where we were like, man, should we finish up eating, run down and see him? But we didn't. We stuck tight, and he did not leave the boat, but he did weigh a swordfish in and a tuna, and for a few minutes he was on the leaderboard, but it was knocked out pretty quickly after. But I believe he has flown back out, but he will be back for the White Marlin Open next week, and I believe he's also fishing in the Mid-Atlantic 500, which is 2 weeks after the White Marlin Open. We're at a point now where we have fishing tournaments every weekend, and it's just the peak time right now.
Does he, by the way, draw any kind of larger crowds? I mean, do people try to try to get a photo of him or something, or does he have that kind of, say, star power?
I mean, I think when the first year, 3 years ago, was the first year he came down, there was a lot of excitement. He was at Sunset Marina. There were people that were, stalking his boat and, driving or riding their boat and also going down the pier trying to get close to him. I know we had a photographer that caught him, kind of walking along the docks. I believe it's kind of tapered off, quite honestly, a little bit now. But the fact, he was Michael Jordan. He couldn't leave the boat on Saturday night because he knew what that would mean for him. Do I believe it adds anything? It just adds a little bit of headlines, quite honestly, from media outside the area. For us, it's kind of it's a yawner for us. We kind of just laugh about it a little bit. Now, if he ends up on the leaderboard, that's a different story. But, I say all this that we yawn about it, but it did give my wife and I consideration whether or not we should finish our meal and see if we could catch a glimpse of him.
By the way, now, do we have any sense as to how many boats are participating? What's the purse look like? What's the scale of this thing?
Yes, I think the big question going into the tournament is, with the rising fuel prices, well, not rising now, but still much higher than they were last summer, would have any impact on turnout. So far, in the fishing tournaments we've had locally, they really have not. The White Marlin Open has kind of shown that it can weather the economic conditions. 2020, it broke a record. Last year, it broke another record for boat numbers, and also purse. Last year, the purse was $9.2 million, and it's believed that it will go over $10 million. So the tournament officials don't really release, early, registration numbers because they do so much on-site registration this coming weekend. But I think that we'll expect in the neighborhood of 475 boats and $10 million purse because of all the added levels that they do with, divisions and categories and Calcuttas. So I think they expect over $10 million, and, I know the forecast so far looks pretty good. A lot of people are looking at the marine forecast already.
In terms of new wrinkles, I understand, for instance, there's no shark division this time around. What other kinds of things are happening that might be a little bit different than what we've seen in the past?
Yeah, I think this is a neat one here, and it's kind of the tournament officials pivoting to what they're hearing from people or from fishermen. There's a small boat category, so under 40 feet now, and there's significant prize money available. So boats that are under 40 feet now can get in that betting game of betting on themselves to pull larger prize money. So I think that alone is going to get the number up over 10 million, from last year. As far as how many boats are under 40 feet, it's different every year, but we were told, it's typically around 100 boats or so. It depends, of course, but under 40 feet is, maybe not the yachts that you'd see. For instance, Michael Jordan's is 60, that's more of a typical yacht size, but there's a lot of, center console type boats that do go out and fish in this. They need obviously calmer seas, but it is a tournament that's kind of trying to appeal to maybe not all just the wealthy fishermen that we typically maybe see in Ocean City for this week.
What kind of impact does these kinds of events have on Ocean City? I mean, are they expanding in terms of tourism? What do we see going on there?
Yes, I mean, the White Marlin Open is the peak of the summer season, so that that the historical impact of that event is pretty well documented. Hotels are full. It's always the worst traffic week of the year because of the bridge going up and down, of course, twice an hour, but longer delays. Hotel rates are at their highest. But, if you look at some of these other events, so the week before the White Marlin Open, as I just mentioned, was the Big Fish Classic, and that had 100 boats participating. So many are local, but it brings in a lot of fishermen from outside the area to participate, which means hotel rooms, restaurant sales, retail sales are impacted. But the week after the White Marlin Open is the Poor Girls Fishing Tournament, which is a breast cancer fundraising tournament that's held at Bahia Marina. That also does very well. It typically attracts over 100 boats as well. And then the following weekend is the Mid-Atlantic 500. So while that's based out of New Jersey, the headquartering marina is in New Jersey. It has a port in West Ocean City. It's Sunset, which brings a lot of people as well. So we are in this, they're huge economic development engines for the town of Ocean City, and every year they can be counted on. It's not such, even with weather not great, which is beach town, weather really drives us, but even when the weather is not great, these events produce.
Greg, I want to turn to you because it looks like the Wicomico County Council may be moving towards a potential ban on what's called, I guess, dissolved air flotation or DAF tanks. You can tell us a little bit about what those are, and I know there's already one near Hebron. I guess one of the questions is, do we expect that this council might implement a total ban on these things, aside from the existing ones?
Yeah, Don, it's a really complicated issue, and there's all kinds of thoughts going on this, and now there's the lawyers have gotten involved in terms of interpreting the state laws and the environmental laws, the farming laws. So basically, near Hebron, near Mardella Springs, there's this huge tank. It's about 1 million gallons. And if you think about 1 million gallons, that's the size of the Salisbury University water tank that's in South Salisbury. So that's how big this thing is. It's on the edge of a field in a wooded area, and it's got an open top. So what happens is materials from a rendering plant, from chicken plants, from some restaurants, meat processing facilities. This stuff is all gathered and hauled and stored in this tank. It's an open-air tank. There's no roof on the tank. So it literally rains into this thing, and as the stuff sits in the tank, it sort of separates, and dissolves. Hence, its name, dissolved air flotation tank, or DAF tank. It's protected under the right to farm. It's considered an agricultural thing. What happens is once this stuff has dissolved, they sort of scrape off the top, and the stuff on the bottom is spray irrigated onto farm fields. Of course, that can't happen during the winter time, during the 12 weeks of winter. So they store it then, but the stuff moves pretty frequently the rest of the time of the year. But there still is a need to store it. So anyway, the big issue out there has been truck traffic. These trucks coming from other places. One of the primary locations comes from a rendering plant in Linkwood, which is between Cambridge and Vienna. And it's stored in this tank. There's truck traffic. There's a insect problem with flies going to this thing all the time. And there's a smell problem, and the neighbors are very alarmed. Now, Department of Environment, Maryland Department of Environment, which is one of the strictest environmental control groups in the entire nation, permitted this many years ago in a move really to try to appease to the environmentalists, because rather than this stuff going into a sewage system or being illegally dumped somewhere else, there was going to be a process that the farmers would benefit, and it would be taken care of, and it would be ecologically justified. But now the environmentalists have turned on this because of the concerns from all the residents. The county's been stuck with this thing, and with neighbors complaining, and they want to do the right thing, and then the farmers saying, well, there is a Right to Farm Act. So what that means is that if people move into a farm area and then they want to complain about the tractors and the smell, they can't, because there is a right to farm. The farm was there first. And this also protects chicken houses, and we've dealt with this for many years. But here in Wicomico, the Farm Bureau has come out against this thing because it's making farmers look bad. It just they don't want to, they can't be in favor of this thing because it is sort of a menace. So anyway, with that as a backdrop, the county council wants to do something. They're coming to the end of their terms, and they're trying to figure out what to do. And they've thought about zoning this thing in an industrial area, mandating that these things be capped so there's no smell. And then there's another issue with, there are other DAF tanks, small 1,000-gallon DAF tanks on farms all over the county. No one knows how many that aren't a nuisance because they're not so big. So I hope I explained a really complicated thing as easily as I could. There's way more to it than that, but there's a long way to go on this thing. But finally, after 3 years of talking about it and hearing resident complaints, the county is finally taking some action.
Do you get a sense that they could actually ban these, at least the large ones? Because that's the thing that really struck me. I think there were 6 votes or something that perhaps do this kind of thing, which is in stark contrast to obviously something like, I think it's the Chicken Association out in Delaware, who said, no, we need to find a compromise. We can't afford to have these tanks eliminated.
Yeah, under the right to farm legislation rules, that it's very difficult to ban these, but they can put some controls on them. They can zone them. They were talking about buffers that they create. They could create, could you create a 5-mile buffer around the tank so that no one nearby is affected? But it's a very problematic thing. Like I said, the lawyers are involved now, and the different lawyers are going to interpret the law in different ways. In fact, the county's 2 attorneys. The council has an attorney. The administration has an attorney. And they're pretty much in agreement, but they're not in agreement on everything. And they're not in agreement on what steps the county should take. But it's going to progress.
Do you get a sense about the likely kinds of restrictions you think they might place then on these tanks?
Oh, there's a million of them. They could, one of the problems is the transportation issue. The trucks on the roads, degrading the roads, these big trucks going into these kind of residential cul-de-sac neighborhoods that are in the middle of farm fields. And that's an issue. So they could control the traffic. They could create buffers. They could require this thing to be capped. But they've been operating under a moratorium for the last 2 years, and now's the time they're going to have to actually do something.
Yeah, because I went down when I did a piece a few years ago on the Hebron. You go down those tiny roads, and you have to actually almost go off to the side in order to get any kind of truck traffic going in the opposite direction, to say nothing about the smell. I mean, it does seem as if this problem has been around for a while.
Yeah, the smell and the bug problem are just, are occasional, I guess, but the truck problem is constant.
I want to turn to you, Steve, because we saw the other day that Sun and Surf is closing down. I've been there. They got these great seats, that you can lean back. Was this a sign of the times in terms of small businesses closing down in Ocean City?
Well, it's definitely a sign of the times. I think it's a COVID casualty, quite honestly, too. For many, as you recall, in 2020, for many months, movie theaters were shuttered, and then they were on restrictions. And this has been rumored for quite a while. It's been discussed, actually privately, really publicly. There's nothing coming forward yet, but we understand soon the new buyer of the property will be coming forward with a townhouse community. The press release announcing the sale from Fox to the hotel developer had purchased it. And while that's not untrue, he has developed hotels in the past, but it's going to be a townhouse community from what we understand. And probably some mixed use is worked in there is my guess. But, it's going to be similar to what sort of the redevelopment that we see at the North Ocean City Phillips location. The movie theater was built back in 1972 with 2 screens, and in 2015, just 7 years ago, it had an extensive renovation with as you mentioned, the cushioned seats, the sound system, and I think it was a sad thing. I know we posted on our Facebook page. Sometimes you post things and you just sit back and watch it, and this is going to be one of those cases, and it goes viral. The consumers do not want to see more townhouses in Ocean City. It does raise a lot of questions as far as, what is there to do in Ocean City on a rainy day? And this is, a few years ago, Planet Maze, which was an indoor laser tag and arcade and had a mini golf, that was redeveloped. There's really, on a rainy day, it's there's few options. Really there are now a lot of bars that have arcades in them, so that's there's an option there. The boardwalk, of course, it's an option for some indoor, but this is I think it's a sad thing. It is a sign of the times, and I just think this movie theater company couldn't make it work and saw the value in selling. They do have a movie theater in North Ocean City called Gold Coast, which is much smaller than the Sun and Surf Theater, but so that'll continue. And then there is a movie theater in West Ocean City called Flagship that is modern, that just opened actually in 2020. So there are options. I don't want to paint the picture that there's no other movie theaters, but it's certainly a sign of the times in Ocean City.
Because we got things like, the Margaritaville resort operation going, and we have obviously new hotels that are coming in. How do you expect this then to change the character of the town? Because, when I first got here, which was about 20 years ago, it was a sort of this quaint resort, beach town with lots of little places, along with obviously some of the big hotels. But with these kind of development, it seems to change the character.
Well, we're teetering on the line here of becoming a residential community, and I think that is, not what we want. I'm not even saying year-round residential community, because the year-round population in Ocean City has been on the decline. The census shows that over the last 10 years, residential population year-rounders have gone down by over 1,000, only from like 7,500 to 6,500. So we're not talking about a lot of people that call Ocean City home. But, we have to have uses and activities for people. And, obviously we have the beach. It's always going to be number one. And we have fishing and, these other things. But, when we become just a residential community, there's a lot of concerns that come with it. And I think the leaders in Ocean City are aware of it and recognizing it, because there is, and we haven't had a joint meeting between the Ocean City Planning Commission and the Ocean City Mayor and Council in over 7 years. So there's a meeting planned for the fall to kind of, have like a strategic workshop on, things such as zoning and anything else to kind of address some of these trends that we're seeing. So much the code can do. If a buyer wants to sell his property, certainly, and we're waiting to see the contract price eventually that get posted. But these sorts of things that never gets stated in the press release announcing the sale. But I do think that the town officials are seeing it and they're understanding it. What will come of these meetings, that's going to be the interesting thing, because we have seen things where the Planning Commission has made a favorable recommendation or unfavorable recommendation to the mayor and council, and the mayor and council has not taken that recommendation and gone a different direction. So that's where the pressures of being in elected office, the mayor and council, compared to the appointed officials, the planning commission. So politics comes into play of some of these things, and I know that that's a source of frustration for the planning commission when they do their due diligence and issue a recommendation one way or the other, and it's not adhered to at the council level. Of course, that's not anything new. Greg, I'm sure, has seen things like that over in his land as well. But it's nice to see at least that the officials are recognizing that there could be potential some action and maybe need to be taken to address this trend.
Greg? Yeah, Steve, I was talking to a boardwalk business owner over the weekend, and I actually said, what's the big deal with this Margaritaville? I don't understand it. It's just the latest thing, coming along on the boardwalk. The Commander was, a controversial thing. And his reply was that the corporation that owns Margaritaville is so huge and will have so much power and influence that it's going to change everything. So, you'll see them advocating for being able to serve alcohol on the beach, which you can do now, I guess, up at Castle in the Sand and up where the Sheraton was, where the Clarion, whatever the hotel the burgers have.
Yeah.
And then they're going to say they need gambling. There's going to be a casino there. So that's what he said that Margaritaville is banking on. Now, I know you're going to cover all this and dig into all this. I don't know what's true and what's not. We've all been snowed by Ocean City business people for years who have predicted awful things, in terms of gambling and things like that, and they never really came to fruition. But there was a quiet alarm in terms of this Margaritaville, because it is such a game changer, because it is such a big company with lots of money that can donate to politicians and influence things in ways that the local people never thought of.
Yeah, there's no question. I think that if you look at that project, 270-some rooms, multiple restaurants. We are a beach town. While we want to say we're year-rounders, really at best it's 6 months busy in Ocean City. And, they see something that they think they can make that sustainable and make the bottom line work. And I think it's interesting to see some of the other business owners, hotel owners in the area kind of crying foul here. You know, the Harrison family, typically a very quiet family as far as on the public front. You know, they have over 10 hotels in Ocean City, numerous restaurants, numerous properties. You know, they came out at a public hearing recently and, you know, really criticized the city for rewriting some of the code, such as giving away air rights over an alleyway, which that's not unprecedented. That has happened in the past. But other things, the big thing is the stacked parking, which is allowing this. This project is so large they can't meet the parking code as presented. But you know, in most developments, they have to meet the code, right? They have to, you know, tweak their plans, downsize it. The Harrison family, they really cried foul over it because they said, you know, we would be embarrassed to bring this to you. We know that we'd be laughed out of the room if we said we need valet stacked parking to allow for us to meet the code. But they got it.
Wow.
So it does makes you wonder.
Greg, I want to turn to you again for election results. They seem to be finally coalescing here.
We finally know.
We finally know who won and who lost. Curious. Well, first of all, what sense do we get, by the way, about the Board of Education? Sounds like at least some of the folks who have been complaining about the direction of education have certainly made some headway. What are we looking at there?
Yeah, in the at-large category, two of the four people are candidates who represent that wing. And then out in the districts, at least one of those is a person in District 3 who represents that wing. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be competitive. Those races are nonpartisan, but they've been winnowed down, and it'll be interesting to see, especially that at-large race in terms of who's going to win in November.
When looking at the stats, I mean, the way they sort of stack up, any particular factions looks like it might be ahead of the game?
No, it's sort of split. So you've got the traditional person, Bonnie Ennis, who's a career educator who everyone knows and likes. She led the ticket. The second person was Kristen Hazel, who's from the rightward group. The third person was a traditional education person, George Demko, and then the fourth person was Darren Lombardo, who sort of leads that so-called radical group. So it's not really any obvious. The primary is not going to really show exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be a competition all the way to the end.
And, of course, we now know who the Republican nominee for the Wicomico County Executive is, which is, of course, Julie Giordano. She beat out John Bassett. The Ernie Davis is, of course, the Democratic candidate in that race. But we also have what could be a potential spoiler. At least I don't know whether he would like me to say that, but Mir Boda is on the city council. He's running as a Libertarian candidate. And the thing that really struck me is that there's a potential there for him to, say, perhaps siphon off might be, say, conservative votes or Republican votes from Julie Giordano.
Yeah, I was talking to some people who know about these things. I like to pretend that I know, but these people actually do know. And my point was, Muir could cause trouble with some of the people on the right in terms of taking votes away from Julie. And it was pointed out to me that Muir, in his entire political career, has never gotten more than 400 votes anywhere, even when he ran for Congress before he was on the council. So, what is his name recognition? What is his pull? How many libertarians are there? Is that really what's going to affect stuff? I think what's going to affect the election most are the tempered Republicans that are in the county. Will they vote for Ernie or will they vote for Giordano, Julie? We just don't know. I think the moderates, the people in the middle, and certainly the undeclared people, the independents, are going to really have a voice in this outcome.
Also, Tim, I want to take a look at the state level. Interesting politics on the GOP side. We've got Governor Larry Hogan, who says he's not going to support, obviously, Dan Cox, not going to support the GOP nominee for Attorney General, Michael Barutka. And at the same time, you've got Bob Ehrlich, the former governor of Maryland, saying that he's going to support Cox. What do we make of what's going on there? And what's this reemergence with somebody like Ehrlich? Greg?
Oh, I just think Ehrlich's struggling to find some sort of purpose and attention, really. I don't know what impact Ehrlich has had since he left office. I was surprised because I think Dan Cox is pretty radical, even for someone like Bobby Ehrlich, who, in order to get elected statewide, had to run as a moderate. Once he came into office, he became more conservative. and he lost re-election because of it, I think. But I was just surprised to hear him perk up on this issue.
Steve, what do you make of this going on in the top of the Republican Party?
Gosh, well, it's going to kind of rehash this in the last few weeks, but I agree with Greg. I was surprised to see it early come out. I don't know. I recall that press release that was sent out announcing Ehrlich's support irrelevant. I really just feel like this is just a layup for Wes Moore, and I just think that we're looking at 75% of the vote going to him in the November election because even some diehard Republicans, not do believe most Republicans will vote for Cox to the state party lines, but some all of us I've spoken to here agree that they're not going to go with the fanatical wing of this, and so yeah, I think it's a concern. We knew this right after the primary that this is Wes Moore's election to lose, and he's going a cruise. I think we all know that, and I hate to be pessimistic on that as far as defeatist, but I just think this was a major blunder on the Republican Party. But it does show the extremist rising to the occasion of the primary.
And also, Ehrlich's running mate, his Lieutenant Governor Michael Steele, has come out in favor of Wes Moore. And Michael is, even though he's probably not relevant either, he's still a gadfly on TV. He's on MSNBC a lot. He's got a podcast. He's known. He's the former Republican national chairman. The Republicans see him as a turncoat, though. He had looked at running for governor as a Republican, very much like Wes Moore in terms of his philosophy and just the way he conducts himself. So Steele is firmly behind the Democrat in this.
Oh, by the way, I just want to get you some reaction to some of the national news because we've seen a lot of Trump candidates win and so on. But the big surprise for me was the Kansas results. Something like 60% of Kansans, a very red state, voted to keep the abortion rights as opposed to 40% opposed. Greg, were you surprised at that?
I was, and this is one of the things they teach in political science. Whenever you have a yes or no vote in a referendum, it's always easier to vote no because anyone who's undecided votes no. People love to vote no. They love to yell no. So for that, in terms of just the process, for that to have succeeded as much as it did was surprising. But I guess, the talk on the national level is that the Kansas legislature got a little too cute in terms of when they wanted to schedule this. They thought they could put it in a primary when most of the people from the right would be showing up. But you see now that the whole Roe Wade argument is going to be an issue in these elections in the fall, as stunning as that is.
Steve, what do you make of it?
Yeah, I totally am on board with Greg there. And I just think, at some point we kind of see this divide between social, I guess we'll call them social moderate Republicans versus the diehard social Republicans, in abortion, gun control, those issues are like that. So, but I agree with Greg. I was surprised to see that come forward. And, when more states come, that's where one of these issues we get to watch.
I mean, one of the things, Steve, that seems to be going on, I talked to Lynn Lazarek with the Maryland Reporter, this idea that this division that's taking place, not only in terms of, obviously, of Donald Trump, but just in terms of the social conservatism versus the sort of moderate, I guess, Republican, that seems to be running throughout the entire party, whether it's at the top of the ticket or whether it's at the local levels. We've seen, obviously, some of it here with the Board of Education stuff. I mean, it does seem as if that division also socially is running through this party at this point.
Yeah, no question about it. And that's so. I think my thing I'm looking to see is that a primary thing, or does that hold over to November? And I mean, my gut says that it will hold over to November. It's one of those things that we're certainly tracking and keeping a close eye on.
Greg, finally, how are we doing on COVID? Wicomico County was up for a while. Now it's sort of holding steady. What are we looking at?
Well, in the last 3 weeks in Wicomico, we did have 3 deaths. So we're at 337 deaths since the pandemic started 2 years ago. And that was a little bit alarming. But the cases have remained average and below average for the country and about average for the state. About 35 new cases a day in Wicomico. What I'm confused about are the people that are doing home testing. Are these people who test positive with home testing, are they reported in the statistics or not? So 35 cases a day. The patient load at Tidal Health, Peninsula Regional, is about normal. I think it was 11 yesterday that were there with COVID. But we are seeing that since the vaccinations, people aren't getting as sick. I just went 2 weeks ago and got my second booster because I realized that so many people that I knew were sick with COVID all of a sudden. So there's been a little surge, at least in my social group, of COVID. My boss has COVID, and I was on a Zoom call with him, and I thought he was going to die right there on the call. He was so sick. So it's interesting to see what's been happening, but I think we're moving on.
You think we should still be cautious?
We have, it depends on who you are. And,
Yeah.
and as I've always just said, it's just polite. It's just polite to wear a mask. What's the big deal?
You, Steve, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think over this way, the concern is turning towards, we're in August now, schools, returning to school, and, any sort of concern that may be coming about return to masking. I would say Worcester County has been pretty aggressive on that front, that I don't believe there's any chance Worcester County public schools will return to masking, but there is some new guidance coming out from the State Department of Education, while not requiring it or even, stopping short of even recommending it, but just kind of just being sent out as like some small revisions are being made as far as quarantine times and things like that. Just anecdotally, I agree with what Greg was mentioning about, I think we're all seeing people that we are contacts with or friends or acquaintances with that are coming down with it. I had a good friend of mine that actually was coming down for a week's vacation, and we had plans to catch up, but he came down with COVID on Saturday, but went to the ER at HEH. Probably not the best use of the ER, but he went there with mild symptoms, strictly trying to get the steroid, the prescription, and got on it, and then within 24 hours he was feeling fine, symptom-free, and then within 3 or 4 days feeling better. So that seems to be what I'm hearing over here. As far as our hospital load, we're under 6 at Atlanta General Hospital, but it also the shorter stays, less severity. As of course it mentioned, depends on age and things like that. But it's running through. But I feel like the general tendency over here is got to move forward, move ahead.
We've been speaking with Greg Bassett. He's the general manager and editor for the Salisbury Independent newspaper, and also Stephen Green, publisher and editor of the Maryland Coast Dispatch. Appreciate both of you joining us this morning.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you, guys.
This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening.
Delmarva Today with Don Rush.